Hello and welcome to Retroformat Live Q&A. Once again, I'm Sean P. Malone, cinematographer and board member at Retroformat Silent Films. And tonight, I'm very happy to be interviewing my fellow Retroformat board member, film director Allison Anders. Highly respected for gritty, realistic films such as Gas, Food, Lodging and MI VIDA LOCA, and for her deeply personal directorial style, she's been awarded the MacArthur Genius Grant as well as a Peabody Award. She's a distinguished professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara, where she teaches in the Film and Media Studies department. And she's also the guest programmer on tonight's Silent Movie Monday presentation of Cecil B. DeMille's The Cheat. Allison, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sean.
Just before this, we were geeking out about movies, so I can't wait to geek out with you some more about this movie. Let me say it's an honor to serve on the Retroformat board with you. Can you tell me a little bit about your passion for silent film and why you serve on the board?
Well, yes. I mean, it is a deep honor for me as well. What few people seem to remember is that in the 60s, those of us that were there, and I was not true, 70s was more my coming of age, but still I was there in the 60s, and there was this kind of a resurgence of interest in classic films and in silent films in particular. So, you know, it wouldn't be unusual to see like a progressive hippie to have like a poster of like a rock band next to a poster of Theta Bara.
Right.
So, you know, Chaplin, Buster Keaton, those silent film stars, and of course Garbo. You know, in fact, I have a Garbo and a Jean Harlow coat hanger. They're coat hangers in the shape of these, and they would just merch that stuff,
right?
You know, because silent movie stars and classic movie stars were really groovy at that time.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of at the end of some of those folks' lifetimes, and maybe they were being appreciated sort of in their twilight years.
Exactly, and I think that was actually also when, you know, Louise Brooks kind of became this iconic kind of look for people. In fact, I even heard that, and this happened in the 60s, where there were some guys in this apartment building who started this little film club, and a silent film club mostly, and they would just all get together and show these movies on a projector, and they had a flyer with Louise Brooks' face on it, and this woman comes banging at the door really angry, and she goes, "Stop making fun of me," and you know, and they're like, "What?" And she goes, "You're making fun of me," and they go, "Oh my God, this is Louise Brooks."
Wow.
And she was still beautiful, but she had this long hair. You know, she didn't look at all like the iconic image. So they were like, "Please come to our club because we would be honored to host you."
Yeah.
So it kind of became Louise Brooks realizing that she had value again.
Okay.
So it's interesting what happened with a lot of those stars. So for me, all of those images were around, and they started as images. And then as a teenager, I became really enamored with Olive Thomas and Jack Pickford, which I am still, of course, and exec producing a documentary on it. And so, you know, I started watching those movies, you know, and you could see these movies on TV back then too, very late at night. You could see classic films, you could see juvenile delinquent films, you could see all of this stuff.
Right.
And you could see silent movies.
You know, it's funny you say that because I had a parallel experience to yours when I was a kid in the 90s, and I got really interested in noir, and I got obsessed with like Bogart and Cagney and you know, the video store next to my house had a little classic section, and that's kind of where I started consuming stuff. But it was really like that, the 1940s and, you know,
Yeah.
mainly that era, that, and probably parallels for the same reasons that it was during that time.
Exactly. And I think it's really, yeah, because I think in the 90s, noir was really getting under people's skin, because we were doing, well, in the 70s, they started doing a lot of neo-noir, but we also had a resurgence in the 90s, like in One False Move, Carl Franklin's movie, or, Devil in the Blue Dress. And there was a whole new world of neo-noir going on. So I think it's amazing that there's always, these stars have this kind of, they have a longevity that is far beyond, I don't know that we make stars like that anymore, sadly.
Right.
I can't imagine someone 20 years from now fixating on anybody right now and going, oh my God, I got to watch all of this person's movies. I don't know who that would be, but.
Well, yeah, and it seems like the performers back then, they sang and they danced, and they were vaudeville. Like, look at James Cagney, for instance, who was a dancer and a boxer and a great actor,
Yeah. He could do comedy, he could do, and you had to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
You weren't reinventing yourself. You were owned by the studio, and they decided that you were going to do a comedy now,
Right. Well, speaking of noir, I read something about the cheat that described some of the lighting as proto-noir, expressionistic, and I thought, well, that's spot on. That's a great description. So you had an opportunity to program this movie tonight. What about it really speaks to you as a filmmaker and as a fan?
Well, I'll tell you, it is a noir. It's a noir before its time. And it's a really unusual silent film in that regard, because the story is very simple. Sometimes in the silent films that we see, the story is really complicated. I know people think that the silent era is really simple, but it kind of, they don't have very succinct stories like this. And this one is very, very clear cut, very simple story with surprising events. That's very noir. It's a noir story.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, especially in terms of plot, right?
Yeah.
Like, some silent films the plots are almost Byzantine.
Yes. And this one is really, it's a very simple story. It's a simple story with complicated characters. Right. And that's what I think is noir about it, including the way that it's shot. It's certainly the first that I've ever seen on film is an interracial kiss. Now, I don't know if that is the first interracial kiss on film, but it's damn early for that.
Right.
And I won't say that it's exactly consensual. However, it is the first kiss between a Japanese actor and a white actress.
Right.
So regardless of the intention of the kiss itself was performed between an interracial couple. Right. Yeah. On screen. So, so that's pretty astonishing, because I'm actually in a film noir group.
Okay.
We're gonna watch The Crimson Kimono, or we have watched it. We're gonna talk about it on Sunday. But that like depicted itself, that Sam Fuller movie, as a kind of, first interracial kiss. It's certainly a first interracial romance between a Japanese actor, white woman, Japanese boy, white girl. But this is like, that was 1959. This is 1915.
Yeah, and even though the character in the film, Sasua Hayakawa's character, even though it's sinister, it's like there's a lot of humanity and complication to what he's doing as an actor, you know?
Well, the amazing thing about it is that the two people that have agency in this film is a Japanese man and a white woman. You know, they're disempowered people, and yet they're the people that are running the story. The rich white male character, her husband, who is also her husband in real life, Jack Dean and Fannie Ward were a married couple.
Okay. He's kind of reactionary.
Yeah, he just kind of, you know, falls into stuff, and he's living out his life. Is all of the actions he take is because of what those two have set up. So he doesn't really have any agency. He's just kind of going along. He's kind of, you know, going along with what he has to do. The amazing thing for me is that Fannie Ward plays a young socialite, which, by the way, she was the oldest person associated with this movie at the time, which is incredible because she looks like she's in her 20s. She was actually in her 40s.
Right.
So she was older than her director, Cecil B. DeMille. She was older than Jesse Lasky. She was older than all of her stars, including her husband. So, and Cecil was gosh, he was about 15 years younger than her.
Yeah.
At the time. So,
and I just put it together that he's in Bridge on the River Kwai.
Oh, he sure is. And he's also in, he's also in the Sam Fuller movie, and he was nominated for both a Golden Globe and an Oscar for that performance in Bridge over the River Kwai.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
He was also in House of Bamboo with Sam Fuller. He was in a movie I saw recently on TCM that was amazing, Hell to Eternity, that was just, it's like the actual story, even though Jeffrey Wright plays the main character, in fact, he was actually in real life a Mexican who was adopted by a Japanese family. They get sent to camps. He doesn't get to go because he's not Japanese with them. He enlists in the army and goes into World War II. And Cecil has this amazing number of scenes, but especially this phenomenal end scene with Jeffrey Wright in that movie. Really incredible. So he really had quite a career, even though one would think, oh my God, he could have had so much more had there not been, you know, anti-Asian racism in the industry and in the country.
Well, he again, just going off on my research, but he seemingly had to sort of fight against this type of role after he played this role in The Cheat. He kind of got typecast as the sinister Oriental man, you know, didn't help his career.
That's right. And then he also he would take roles, like he played Mexicans, he played Spanish, he played Persians, and every kind of Asian. So I don't even know if he's supposed to be Japanese exactly in this movie. I can't remember. I think he is, but he's an ivory trader.
So when it was released, it was Japanese when the film was first released. But then there was a protest and uproar about it, and they changed it to Burmese simply because the U.S. didn't have they were allies with Japan at the time, and there were many more Japanese living in the U.S. than Burmese, so they didn't think Burmese would make a stink about it, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. Incredible.
Well, the amazing thing, too, is that she's sort of, you know, Fannie Ward plays this woman, young woman. Her relationship with her husband is kind of like he's like her daddy, you know, that's always kind of like going, now don't spend too much money. And he doesn't see her at all. He has no clue who she is. She's as much his property and his baby as she is. She's not a woman to him. however, this relationship she has with Seshu's character is really fascinating because he clearly sees who she is. He sees through who she is in every which way,
Yeah,
and she's his partner.
that's
I
true.
mean, he's her partner. He's the one going to these functions with her. And in the very beginning, she says, "Oh, my husband, he's getting on me about spending too much money and about you."
Right.
So she's flirtatious with him throughout the whole thing. I mean, even when he first shows her the stamps that he uses to brand his products, his ivory, his fine ivory products,
Yeah.
he even says, "Oh, it's to to put my mark on things that belong to me."
Right.
She kind of gets a little like, kind of a little twitter, like, "Oh God," she's not scared at that point,
Right.
but she's a little like, flustered by it, because there's a sexual tension between them.
Uh,
So,
And there's a good bit of foreshadowing in that line where that's going to come
oh
back
yeah,
later. You
you
absolutely
sure
know.
do.
Yeah.
You sure do. And I think that there's a kind of, because he was determined not to just play a stereotype, not to just play a villain. He's colored with all of these different things.
Yeah.
You couldn't have possibly have gone to see that movie even then and not felt tremendously for him. When that couple is walking off at the trial, the husband and wife, you're like, yeah, okay, but what's happening to him?
Yeah.
You're more interested in him. You're like, the mob isn't going to kill him, are they? You're kind of looking out for him, and you're wondering, what's his life now? You're not wondering about them so much at all.
You're right.
So he's amazing. And then after this movie came out, and some say that maybe even in part because of that outrageous scene, of him branding her,
Mm-hmm.
You can't justify that ever. You can't justify any man giving a woman $25,000 and saying, "And then you're going to sleep with me." You can't justify any of that at all.
Right.
However, apparently that branding scene, it didn't hurt his celebrity at all. In fact, it created it. So, and I think it's not because of the act itself, but I think it was because he went for it. When he's doing that, he turns into this vicious guy, and he completely makes that believable and makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that must have been very shocking in 1915, because I can't think of anything else at that time that was quite like that.
Sure.
That scene. So, after this movie, he became this huge sex symbol for white women. So it wasn't just Asian women, it was white women as well. And I read one thing where they said, "Oh, women threw their fur coats." Female fans would throw their fur coats over puddles so that he wouldn't have to step in the white water, So I mean,
Wow.
he had quite a fan base. However, he was determined to make movies that showed a richer picture of Japanese life. He didn't consider that character Japanese at all, that he played in The Cheat. And so then later a few years later, you got, a film like The Dragon Painter, which is just one of the most gorgeous movies of the silent period.
Yeah.
And
we'll have to bring that to our audience.
I'll tell you, it would be a beautiful one to bring. Absolutely. Because that's a really gorgeous movie. and very complex and very lyrical. And you know, that was his movie, and his wife is also in it. She was his wife during this movie as well. Help me pronounce her name again.
Suru Aoki.
Suru Aoki.
Yeah.
And she's in The Dragon Painter, and they lived together for life. I mean, he died in Japan, and in fact, around the time that this movie was being made, he was gaining custody of his son, who he had with a white woman.
Mm.
So he actually had an interracial relationship and a biracial child. And he and Aoki adopted that child. Aoki adopted him, and so he became their son, and then they adopted 2 more children.
Well, the world has been in turmoil, and it often is in turmoil. And I just wanted to ask you, what place do you think cinema, both old and new, has in contributing to this conversation that we're having about bettering the world that we live in right now?
Well, here's the thing. This morning I was like, oh my God, should we be doing this today? Should we be doing this? And then I was like, no, we're talking about race. We're talking about race in the movie industry. And yes, we should be having this conversation.
It's representation, right? We see how each group, or how you feel represented or how you don't feel represented on the screen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the ways that some of these actors, these non-white actors, have had to take a role, like this role that Cecil has in this film, and give it texture and give it humanity and give it complication and give it scope. You know, that I'm a person. I'm not the villain in this movie. I am a guy who does one very scary thing, but I'm a man. You know, he plays a man.
Yeah.
You don't leave this movie thinking, oh, that was the villain. You go, oh, that was that man.
Right. Yeah.
And he made that choice.
Yeah. Well, he brings more to it than a caricature. That's
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Allison, it's been so great talking to you. I've enjoyed talking to you. Right before we leave, though, I just want to remind our viewers, if you enjoyed tonight's performance and Q&A, please consider making a suggested donation of $7 to Retroformat by visiting retroformat.org/donate. Our mission is to further the education and the viewing of silent film, always with live musical accompaniment. So if you want to support that, that'd be awesome. And I want to thank Allison again for joining us.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for the next installment of Retroformat Live. I'm Sean P. Malone. Thanks for watching, everyone.